Hello everybody and welcome to the Full Potential Show. I'm James Rick and this is your #1 non-boring source for personal development. Today I've got a special book that I would like to review with you very quickly. There are 15 lessons in the book, Start Small, Finish Big, by Fred DeLuca. Now this book, it's obviously a little beat up. My mom just brought it from she got it from one of those when everybody's done reading it, they turn it in and then, you pick it up for $1. So this was a really good investment. Anyhow, Start Small, Finish Big, Fred DeLuca. He's got 15 lessons for starting small and finishing big. And who is this man, may you ask, Fred DeLuca? Well, this is the founder of Subway. He's either a billionaire or hundreds and hundreds of millionaire. And the Subway franchise is one of the fastest growing franchises around the world. 15 lessons from a billionaire. Are you ready? Let's begin. So #1, start small. If you want to finish big, starting small is the best way to begin. Now, personally, I started my first company when I was, just out of high school and I had less than $1,000. And starting small is a really good way to start because you learn the principles of business. You clear out the naivety. If you had a lot of money, when you start, you're going to waste it. You're going to use it all. I've been there too. I've had some investment capital and whoop, I used it all up and I was still in the learning phase. So if you don't have a lot of capital and you want to get started on something and you're afraid of starting small, don't. Starting small is the best way to begin. And if you want to finish big, you're in a great spot. Many, many stories in this book about people starting small and finishing big, including Fred himself. Lesson 2, earn a few pennies. Now this is part of starting small, right? You might want to immediately jump in and make millions of dollars. No, earning a few pennies or pesos or whatever it is that you're earning is going to allow you to start to learn the rules of finance, to see that money can come in from ideas. It's going to set the foundation for earning dollars if you're just starting out earning pennies. So do not worry if you're starting out small. Lesson number three, begin with an idea. So all great things begin with an idea, just a little improvement. What can you make something, a little better, a little faster, a little cheaper, a little more quality? What can you do to improve on something just 5 or 10%? Start with that idea because you may have a business or you may have something you can contribute to a company that will pay you back in big dividends. Now, lesson number 4, think like a visionary, okay? Thinking like a visionary means think big, set goals, know where you want to go. In the book, Start Small, Finish Big, Fred talks about how when they started the first Subway, they immediately knew that they wanted to open 32 chains in 10 years. They were thinking big. They were thinking like a visionary. The chains didn't exist, but they knew that they wanted to have 32 chains in 10 years. That's thinking like a visionary. Lesson number 5, keep the faith. They talk about in the first 6 months, they ran into financial challenges and they could have easily closed the first store. But instead of closing the store, what did they do? They opened another store to start comparing the results from one to another. And actually, it was one of the best decisions they ever made. Instead of quitting, they kept the faith and they kept on going. So as long as you can survive in business, keep the faith and keep on keeping on. Lesson number 6, ready, fire, aim. All right, sometimes you think, business plans, business school, I need to do all this research, I need to be an expert in my field, I need to go through all this analysis. That's the way to do the things that I want to do. Not necessarily. Ready, fire, aim is obviously a play on ready, aim, fire. And that means when you're ready, just fire and then later refine it. Aim a little bit more carefully as you're doing it, as opposed to waiting until you got everything perfect and then trying to fire, because it may never happen, or you could be 80, 90 years old before you eventually get ready to fire. So ready, fire, aim, action. It's all about action. That's lesson number 6. Lesson number 7, profit or perish. That's the fundamental of business, right? I mean, if you're not profiting, you're going to perish. So it's about survival, and profit means survival. So you got to keep your costs low, operate lean and mean until you can get to profitability. They talk about in this book how in the beginning, it's a little messy. They spend a little more than they thought. In fact, they had, they were measuring themselves based on the number of sodas sold, the number of sandwiches sold or whatever, and they weren't necessarily measuring themselves on profitability. So it's profit or perish. It doesn't matter what your revenues are, it matters what your profitability is. Lesson number 8, Be positive. No matter what you're going through, other people have either gone through it or they've gone through worse than you have. And those same people, in many cases, there's people who have made it through tremendous difficulty, and the only way they have is they were able to reframe a situation. They were able to look at it more positively. It doesn't mean be this Pollyanna, thinking positive and not looking at reality as it really is. There's an elephant on my foot. Get the freaking elephant off my foot. I don't need to think positive about it. What it does mean, though, is that you look at options. You don't just say, oh, all is lost. You look at options, you're positive, and when you're positive, you're going to come up with solutions. Lesson number 9, continuously improve your business. This goes back to your idea. What could you improve? What could you make better? But then now that you've taken action, now that you've fired, it's time to start aiming a bit and refining it a bit more. And he talks about, in his business, they started out and they weren't consistent in the way that they made their sandwiches. They weren't consistent in the way that they baked their breads. They weren't consistent in where their franchises got their bread. So there was a lot of things that they needed to look at and they needed to improve. And there's another thing he talks about in there. He doesn't say it specifically, but he was following the 80-20 principle, which is you could probably come up with 1,000 improvements for your business, but it may be 2 or 3 that represent the greatest change for your business that's necessary. So look at, when you follow the 80-20 principle, you look at the 20% of the changes that are going to make 80% of the difference in your business, in your profitability, in the quality to your clients. Try to look at things with an 80-20 filter and say, what are the 20% that's going to make 80% of the results in my life and my business? Lesson number 10, believe in your people. One of the traps that entrepreneurs fall into is that they don't trust their people, or even managers. They don't trust their people to do a job, so they feel like they have to do it themselves, and they burn themselves out working so many hours because they're not believing in their people and they're not delegating effectively. Fred talks about how in Subway, at first, they didn't trust some of their franchisees, they didn't trust some of their employees, and they were really deep in the business, but eventually he learned by surrounding himself with smart people, with reliable people with track record, or people who acquired a track record. He was able to step back and he was able to give them their space. And I'll tell you what, giving them that autonomy also makes them feel more responsible, and they're going to take more of an effort. If they're good people, you've got to observe, and obviously they got to build a track record, but once they do, step back, let them do it their own way. They're not going to do it exactly the way you would, but they're going to do it the way they will, and it might even be better than the way you would do it.